Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Room. We are here today with another very special guest on the channel. We have the former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, a former TNA X Division Champion, and a former ROH World Champion. We have the World Warrior, Loki, on the channel today. How's it going, my man?
It's going well. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. It's great to have you on the show. I've been a big fan for a very long time. It's quite the honor to have you on the show here today. Your wrestling career has lasted unbelievably, it sounds now, over a quarter of a century. I think we're up to something like 26, 27 years now. You're still competing, or you have been within the last couple of years, for places like House of Glory in North America. You still go to Australia. I've seen you New Horizon Pro Wrestling, I believe. We've seen you in places like that as well. What's it like to be in this 26th, 27th year of your career and still being able to face all these new wrestlers from around the world?
Well, it's a consistent challenge. Growing up with it, I mean, I've done it my entire adult life, and I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it well. I'm still capable of doing things that reasonably, under what my body has gone through, I shouldn't be able to do, but I do. So it's the puzzle. It's figuring out the puzzle on how to keep going without breaking down. And as a pro athlete, because that's what this is, if it's done correctly, that's what this is. As of late, people make you think it is, but they're not really living like it is. But to do it this long, I understand why the goal is 30. I understand why the goal is reaching that milestone. Not everybody gets there, especially doing it the right way.
I think, like you said, reaching that 30, it is coming closer and closer each year now. We're only a couple of years away. If you've been thinking about that a lot, has that number been stuck in your mind for quite a while now?
Because of coming up in the culture of professional wrestling, especially in Japan, and then pretty much the Reformation in the early 2000s. That was a good contrast in giving you that excitement of, I want to do this just as long as those guys have been. So I'm talking about the Tiger Masks, Ricky Choshu. Um, obviously, as of late, the retirees, which would be Muda, uh, is very few. I think Taka Michinoku just reached 30. Um, Jinsei Shinzaki, I think he reached 30. So there's a handful that are still going, but that's the testament on how much they loved it, because they're not doing it badly. There's a difference between, you're riding old value and you can still go. It may not be the same as the past, but if you look at it, oh yeah, you need to be careful with them. You can still go. And that's the whole idea. I'm a martial artist. I'm not a gimmick pro wrestler. So there's a big difference in what I do. And because I take care of myself, that's the reason why I've been able to do it this long. And look at my size. I'm small in this environment.
Right.
Look at the stuff I had to do against all of those guys. Look at how big they were. Now look at me. Look how small I am. People didn't understand that. Why do you think I had to go in guns blazing? I'm not going to let them hurt me, especially if they're untrained. I'm not going to let them hurt me, especially if they're trying to hurt me.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like you quickly mentioned, then you said about some people have maybe reached that 30-year not limit, but that 30-year goal. But not everybody has been able to stay that consistent, and I think it does. It shows a lot about your training and everything outside of wrestling, to, like you said, a complete martial artist, to be able to still perform and, well, perform to that still the same standard.
Mhm. You have to have an integrity about you to do it this long. And I'm not even talking about my generation. I want to give an example of Bullet Bob Armstrong.
Right.
Bullet Bob, he raised his family in it. His boys are still doing it. One of his boys is considered one of the best technical of all time because of the way he did things from a technical standpoint in the ring. He did it until he passed away, until he couldn't do it and passed away. But he did it into his 70s.
Mm.
That's, I mean, he topped all of us. So, if you love it that much, you want to try to keep going as long as you can doing it. And I grew up loving this. And when I got a chance to do it, I did it at the highest possible level I could physically give. So, as far as doing the things that I did or being able to do the things that I do, I'm intentional. I'm thinking about what I want to do and I'm getting it done. I'm making excuses. Things happen, but I still get things done. And that's another thing for a wrestler, a professional wrestler. Traditional wrestlers, they can be big and strong, but it's the endurance. If you can go 29 minutes and the other one can go 30, you're in trouble. So, like, real wrestlers understand the endurance is a big weapon. So, me and my size, not only am I ferocious, I got endurance. So, that's another weapon that a lot of these guys who want to play wrestler, they don't want to be around.
Mm.
So for me at this stage of my career, that's what I'm going after higher level guys, but more of the older generation guys that are still going. Because I put out a list a while ago of like 10 Japanese wrestlers that are still going, but they're more my generation. I'd rather wrestle those guys instead of the younger guys now.
Mm. When you started, say in the very, very late 90s, you started on the local scene in New York and New Jersey. What was the local wrestling scene like there at that time when you first started?
It was a mixture of uh, the gimmick wrestlers and the new version attitude era uh, toughness,
Mm.
like wildness that they wanted to push the envelope with ideas and shock value. And wasn't the worst thing in the world, at least for me, but I saw the damage it did to a lot of people because they wanted to just go shock value all the time. And then it turned into like the expansion of the hardcore and gore and all that stuff. And like a lot of those guys who did it back then, they didn't last long. And then it was like past their generation. Then you have the ultra violent generation
Mhm.
and the stuff that's going on now. It's like this far in, we don't need that. It's not necessary. Show you can wrestle. You have to work.
When I think of Loki, there's very few wrestlers where even if it was just a silhouette of somebody, you can picture them, you could still pick them out. If it was just a silhouette of you, I could still pick out Loki, just the stance, everything. I think that's quite unique, that's quite a special thing. Um, how much went into this Loki character when you were coming up with this character? Is it a case of you turned yourself up to 10, or was it just something that you managed to create in your mind?
Well, just by the terms, the language and the words that you use, I can tell where your framing is coming from. So I'm not a gimmick.
Mm.
That's what people misunderstand. I can change my outfit. Doesn't matter. I'm not a gimmick. So it's a different idea than what people are accustomed to because most people's frame of reference now is all the BS terminology that the WWE and the old carning system pumped out during the Attitude Era, and then it spread out onto the indies with the terminology, and then all the smart marks were behind the rails, but the wrestlers didn't do any justice either with their attitudes and behavior. So it was just the expansion of negative terminology. So what I did was I was just technical. I just out trained everybody. So I was physically capable of doing stuff I wanted to do because I actually trained, and I trained a lot. So I wasn't out partying. I wasn't out drinking.
Mm.
I was training a lot. I mean, I was training, let's see, 2005 when I was in NOAA. I'm training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm lifting in the afternoon, 2.5 hours heavy. Then I'm going to judo Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. And then I'm doing Saturday and Sunday mornings, 3 hours of grappling. And then on the weekends is when we got wrestling. So that's when I'm doing my shows. So I'm training like a maniac for what I want to do in the ring, especially if I can't hurt these guys and stop them from continuing because we're all traveling from place to place, from city to city, from country to country, especially at that time. So you physically have to be strong enough to tolerate all that travel. So it was a whole different world physically, but that's the life of a true professional.
Mm.
You can't waste minutes. You got to make them work for you.
Around 2002, this brand new promotion started up, Ring of Honor, and it quickly became the workers' promotion within the US. It was more focused, like you said, on people who were truly about the wrestling within the ring rather than things that we become accustomed to on TV at that time. And you were on that very, very first show, and you even became the inaugural world champion of the promotion. When you first started in Ring of Honor, I was wondering, did you kind of see it as just another startup promotion at that time, or even early on, could you kind of see how well loved it would become over time? Did it feel special even from that early beginning?
Well, it was based off of what we began in Jersey All Pro
Mm,
because Jersey All Pro would book me in light heavyweight matches, but I was the only one who would shake hands before and after matches. So Feinstein would come to the TLC shows and record for us, and then he would come up with the idea for doing Ring of Honor, and it was based off of just the sportsmanship. So we were trying to eliminate all the goofiness or all the excess and just go down to the wrestling, because at least at that time we had a good environment in the Northeast of different people. So we had all kinds of different people with different styles. So to me, it was like hip hop in the 90s, where you had all these different artists with different styles. Nobody was alike.
mm.
But when they got together, it was good to see because it was like a cool battle. And that's what it was. It was like skill sets, skills fighting each other, almost like old style martial arts.
Right. One of the um, one of the matches that stood out to me the most around that time, and again, it was because it was just so different from anything that we were kind of used to seeing at that time, was the match with Samoa Joe. It kind of had this. I think it was the Fight Without Honor match. Um, it was the it had throwbacks from Inokiism, it had a bit of the UWFI from Japan, kind of that style. It felt more like a mixed martial arts fight. Um, it always stood out to me because it was just something so different, and at that time, I hadn't seen that stuff from earlier on, so to me, it was very, very new. What were your kind of influences going into that match? Like, what were you trying to achieve with that match?
It was just another match of competing against somebody with skill set.
Mm,
Joe was the monster, but he was a West Coast guy. I'm on the East Coast. So it was one of those where, okay, we got two bangers. Let's see what happens when they meet. And we ended up meeting in 2001, I believe, for the King of the Indies.
mm.
So we got busy there. And then uh, they were interested in bringing him over. And that was the first match, which was the fight without honor, because we were not afraid to bang. So everybody else was like, all right, cool, go for it. But the thing was, Joe was already in Japan at that time. he got to Japan before I did.
Mm.
So he was already in Japan with, I believe, Shinzeki promotion over 0-1. And so 0-1, yeah, that was rough because that was like dogfighting because of how strong those guys are. So when you guys saw me versus Samoa Joe in October 5th in 2002, that was because he was uh, already in the mix with all those older generation shoot fighters from Japan, and the energy was already there. So, like, we weren't trying to be gimmicks. Everybody knew how to fight. And there's just certain people that, all right, cool, this is going to be fun. Let's go.
Mm.
And Joe was one of them. And there was something that ended up happening in New York the night before that set me off. And I almost didn't go because I needed to stay home and protect somebody. So that match almost didn't happen. And I think I got into the building at like 6 p.m. because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it. And by the time I got there, just walked right in, started getting ready. And then what you guys saw is what you guys saw.
Wow. Um, I mean, I'm so glad that it did happen because it kind of changed. Even though it was pro wrestling, it did kind of sounds weird, awaken something, I guess. But it kind of, I got to go back then to watch those matches in rings, the matches in WFI and things like that, and it kind of broadened my uh, yeah, on what
So
pro wrestling could be, because I just didn't know before then. So it does still hold a very special place for me. It's kind of one of those first matches that brought this new style to me. Um, while you were in ROH through different times. You've been in a few different groups and factions. One of them that stood out to me was always the Rottweilers with Homicide, Ricky Reyes, who we've recently had on. We had Julius Smokes, and I'm forgetting somebody, Rocky Romero. This group. What was it like being around those? What was it like being in that particular group for you?
I think people misunderstand sometimes that groups are not, uh, they're not like formed on purpose. We were all friends just from wrestling. So it wasn't like we're walking into the place all together and throwing up gang signs saying Rottweilers, bitch. No, we weren't doing that. Like we were cool with each other. So we were all friends. It was different. That's the thing. It's if you're doing something like this, if you're using your body, you need to know how to fight because if somebody's on the other side thinking they can play with your body, that's a very poor misunderstanding. But that's coming from the other side because there's two histories for pro wrestling. There's the entertainment history, and then there's the sport history. You weren't aware of the sport history. There's a very rich sport history if you look through the lineage. So that's what I'm going after. That's what I've always gone after. So that's the important thing. You get to broaden your awareness to stuff. And when you see those matches, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, what's this? And you're going to be seated in that building when one of those goes off. Because even from my perspective, I've been able to do it, but I've also been able to see it from older generation wrestlers who come before me. When you create the electricity in the air, which is what Gorilla Monsoon used to talk about in WWF, he would say it at WrestleMania. So you would hear the electricity in the air. So I believe it was Sarah Del Rey, um, Amazing Kong, Myson Smith, and myself in Pro Wrestling Noah at one of our events where it was Kenta Kobashi versus Riki O, which is a former sumo wrestler.
Mm.
and the GHC title. And at one point, they created the electricity. So I think that's an important thing to understand when you go to the stadium, when you go to the arena. There's different energy signals to hit, and that's you wouldn't know that unless you got experience from that. But that's what I mean. Like this, I still train. I'm still training, so I'm pretty sensitive to a lot of stuff. But Kenta Kobashi and Ricky O, they created that electric hiss in the building, and that's crazy to be in the back of the room and you can hear that
Mm.
while the match is going on. So there's different ways of achieving that, but usually competition is just the rawest way that everybody can appreciate.
You mentioned something about being ready, and if somebody on the other side kind of isn't there as well with working with you. Have you had many instances within wrestling where that has occurred for you?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, far too many because I'm still paying for them now. But that's what happens when you're dealing with people who aren't necessarily trained. Although accidents do happen, so I'm not condemning anybody. But at the same time, the reason why it was so raw back in the day was because you needed to trust the people you were in the ring with. Because if not, you can be in a whole lot of danger thinking you're playing around. I've been around long enough to see a whole bunch of people come and go. And I'm looking at the stuff that's coming up now, and there's a whole bunch more of people who are just going to come and go because they're not serious about what they're doing. They're playing around, and it looks terrible. And what is this? This is not what I do. I'm a professional at what I do. I'm not playing. And don't think that getting in there is going to be any games. It never has been. So that's how you end up lasting as long as I have, because I've had to go against the biggest and the smallest, literally, and still hold my own against them. So there's a difference in what my experience is in regards to what this is, what I do, and then what's available for perspective currently. So it's not the same what you guys are seeing now, but it's cool to see the specialness of what happened in the past because you can see the energy, you can see the difference in everybody. But you can see when they're coming at each other, yeah, they're doing it. They're serious about what they're doing, and it looks great. Why? Because they're really doing it, and there's a technique behind what they're doing. Is it perfect all the time? No, but if you guys are attacking each other, well, don't miss.
Do you think that's why the Japanese style always stood out to you more? Um, because it was more of a physical style of pro wrestling.
It was just more technical.
Mm.
You could see what's going on. And most of the time in the past, they would be the wrestlers would be recruited from other sports. They would be recruited, but they would be trained. They wouldn't be recruited and then just thrown into situations. It would never happen because they needed to train properly and with technique to be able to do this type of business, a traveling professional. So, or the traveling prize fighter. Like this is no different than the past. But if you're reckless, if you're irresponsible, you're gonna pay a dear price for it. And it's not friendly at all, especially if you screw up badly. And I've been able to outlast a lot of people, and I'm not boasting or gloating about it, but there's reason for it. And yeah, I've been hurt by a lot of people at my size, usually bigger than. So there's a good reason why I'm as intense or aggressive as I need to be when I'm in the ring.
Right.
But that's what happens when you put people in there who don't belong there, or they think they're gonna play at another person's expense. It's not a smart situation.
Do you think a martial arts background, whether it be, any type of martial arts, should be taught within wrestling schools? Because even for somebody like me, I'm only at a purple belt level in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu. They're two different sport. But even sometimes when I'm watching groundwork and things, I'm like, oh, like it just looks so fake because you're used to small movements, when you're actually training. Do you think things like this should be taught within wrestling schools these days because people are more aware maybe of, technical aspects?
Well, one is you're going to have to eliminate the big problem, which is what is the reason most of these people are running a school? Because as far as I can see, there's absolutely no one qualified to run a professional wrestling school in the United States, let alone anyone in the UK. Because if you ain't got Johnny Saint, Steve Regal, or Fit Finley teaching anybody right now, they're stealing your money. In the United States right now, you can't trust anybody because the manner of how they're teaching people is not to prepare them to do a lifestyle of this, how to travel and protect your body and do all of this. They're trying to get paid at the expense of the students. They don't care about them, so they're not training them. So it's turned into a very big negative environment. So the first thing I would say is what qualifies the person to teach you and take your money? Why? Because people are so enamored with the idea of being in a ring, with the idea of doing something like what they see on TV, they don't care. And there's a lot of bad people who like using wrestling as a way to take others' money or take something from somebody else because that's the entertainment side. It's extraction based off of the carnival experience or the carnival history of X marks the spot. They're targeting somebody for something specific, which is a continuation of old world behavior. I'm not dealing with all that. I'm dealing with, all right, you can fight, get in there. It's the simplest idea. But if you're going in there and the person who's actually teaching is not qualified to be teaching because whatever their experience is doesn't justify that they can teach you to protect yourself while you do this, why are you giving them your money? Because you're also giving them your body. You're the one who's going to sign that waiver, and you're the one who's going to get in that ring. If something goes wrong, oh well, do you have insurance? That's what's happening. So you see, everyone gets mad at me because I'm the one who tells the truth. I tried to protect everybody 5 years ago. Oh, no one talks about that. So what I'm doing is doing things from a technical standpoint. If you're understanding where you're putting your time, body, and attention, including the resource of your money, if you can trust that you're going to go from this point to this point, if you give them your money and you spend your time and your money with that, then okay, that's justified. But most of the people who get in the ring for pro wrestling, they don't give a damn about anything other than getting in the ring and acting a fool. Why are they getting attention? I don't care about attention. I'll pull it once I get in there, but it's because that's skill. I'm not wanting, I'm not whining, I'm displaying. That's what the professionals do. I've been around legends. I was able to hang with these guys in the ring. And people don't understand that this is skill and this is human chess, professional wrestling, professional grappling. So these are skills, but people got stuck on the idea of I can look a certain way and draw the attention. So I don't have to do that.
Mhm.
No, that's a different attitude and it's a different ending. But you don't understand that.
Do you feel like wrestling is kind of, it's almost as much as something that you want to do, is something that you kind of need to do?
Not at all.
No.
No, because I loved what I was doing, and now I'm disgusted by it because I'm disgusted by what it's turned into and what it's allowed. You got unqualified people being propped up, and you got bad habits and bad things being promoted. Not a good ending because the culture is going to end up generating something you're not going to be able to deal with. And you need integrity, you need boundaries as a professional. I understood, yeah, people like partying and they like enjoying the fruits of their labor and stuff like that. If you focus, you'd be amazed at things that you can do. I don't have these logos behind me for a reason, just for any reason. I was in all these places. I was able to do something very, very interesting because I drove myself to do it. I had the energy to do it. I did it with respect. I did it professionally. And I wasn't bothering anybody else. I wasn't condemning anybody else. I just did my own thing, went from point to point, and that was it. I wasn't trying to make friends. If I did, cool. If I didn't, that's also cool. Kept to myself. But the life of a professional, oh, that's a very serious thing. So if I'm a living testament to lasting this long, especially at my size, I did it like a martial artist, continuous improvement. You got to do that. I was able to do very, very difficult things just at will. That's a whole different thing. That's a mindset. My generation is Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Mike Tyson, Bo Jackson. These are greatest of all time level references. That's my motivation. But to conquer the environment that I did, I wasn't doing it recklessly. I couldn't. Too dangerous. So you treat it with respect and do it intentionally well, you'll see the really, really good return, especially if you're focused on accomplishing it the right way. Undercutting people, doing it in sneaky ways, cheating and all that, that won't work out well because you're going to draw attention in the wrong way, especially in an environment that warrants the shock value behavior. It pays for people to do that kind of stuff. So then you start having people liking to do that on purpose, just at will. They want to see what they can get as a result. Look at what you got now. You got influencers, people walking around town with their phones. And then if you interrupt their shot, they're acting like you caused the problem. So this is a different culture for you guys now. You go back to old style. All right. How many squats did you do so that you know you can wrestle for 30 minutes in a ring? It's not, oh, I could do more squats than you, or we're going to use them as torture. No, dumbass. This is for you to get better so you can do the main event level. Like there's reason behind it. So there's like it's really not as complicated as people have made it to be. If you simplify it and just do it with repetition and do it well because you intend to do it, not because you're forced, is a different thing. You can have a lot of really good returns. And I say I'm the living proof because at my size, especially when you look at the size of the bodies, I shouldn't have last, but I was careful, at least for the most part of what you do in this line of work.
With the mindset that you do have, was it like an individual, like trainer or somebody that kind of taught you these values and things, or was it from looking, like you said, like looking at the greats and the way they would act and they would kind of learn these things, or was it from like literature? Where did this kind of mindset first start for you? Do you think?
I think it's just a continuation of what all we do all of us do as children. That's all it is.
Mm.
I'm observing, I'm listening, but I'm not interrupting it. And then I'm able to use that information. So there's a manner of how I'm doing things so that it comes with intelligence. Me being around that era of time, my father would stress Bruce Lee. My father was also in the military, so there was more structure. Um, and the referencing for the highest level athletes, attentions, things like that, they were significantly dominant attitudes. And they were still varied. They were different personalities. So the framework for uh, just conquering completely different back then. What you see now is a lot of hype, a lot of wanting, but back then it was a whole different world, more raw, and that's the simplest manner of what we do in the ring. You got one guy, you got another guy, you got one girl, you got another girl. You make them wrestle. All right, who's gonna win? You don't need all this excess, especially if these people are good. They actually dedicated their time. In 2023, I had yeah, I had 7 or 8 students all active at the same time. And why? They put in the work. They put in the work and it was showing good results while they were in the ring. So there was a reason to it. I understood what they needed. I got them through it. They delivered and they did well. So that's what a lot of people just misunderstood about the entertainment side of wrestling. They got focused on so much of that that it took away the respect of all the hard work that's required to do the traditional version because everyone's focused on the entertainment version. When you go back into history and you see Tiger Mask with Shuto style against Fujiwara, yeah, I've wrestled Fujiwara too. I've also wrestled his student, Minoru Suzuki. So yeah, there's a different world, but it was so special back then because you had all different people, different backgrounds, but they were skilled. And when they were skilled and met up against each other, there's your chess game. That's the cool part. So now, I see people trying to imitate that stuff, but it has to be done a certain way. You need skill. And that's all I'm going after. With the list that I put out, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I had Shinzaki on there and I had Great Sasuke on there. That's for me because I grew up watching the Super J era. But I'm also the generation after them. So I'm going after like Tana, or the generation after them would be late 90s, early 2000s. So I got like Ikuto Hidaka, who I wrestled in 01. But this late in our careers, I would love a run back. Even Dick Togo, I never got a singles with him while we were in 01. Um, Tanahashi in New Japan, Shinsuke from New Japan. Um, even Tatsumi Fujinami, he's still going. I know he's doing 6 mans, but that's whole style. And he's I believe, the first junior champ, IWGP junior champ. So, there's history there. And Tiger Mask, I know he's older now and they come out to play every now and again. So even having that opportunity, I'm all for it. So I'm going through history. Why? Because there's lineage there. That's the kind of stuff I'm going after, especially now. You know, I'm this deep into my career. I still do have my aches and pains from doing it this long. So you want to be selective on how much you're given at this time.
Because you mentioned Tanahashi and people like that. They're all coming towards the end of their career now. I believe Tanahashi had his last US match not that long ago. Around the same time that ROH started, another startup started, and it kind of almost came from the ashes of like a WCW, and that was TNA. And TNA had a lot of similarities to WCW, where they kind of put a lot of focus on the cruiserweight division, and we now called it the X division, the division with no limits. They called it. What was it like when you first went to TNA in that very first run? See, the obviously people like Amazing Red. Believe AJ Styles was on the first shows with you as well. What was it like those first couple of tape-ins with TNA when you first started there?
For me, it was very similar to Ring of Honor.
Mm,
Had a whole bunch of different people from different backgrounds, and it was the start of another company. But for the most part, everybody was trained. Everybody was different, and at least with my guys, me, AJ Daniels, Jerry Lynn, everybody was aggressive in their own way. So we were fighting in our own styles against one another, but the chemistry was off the charts because we were we already knew what was out there, and we weren't trying to do the same stuff everybody else was. We were trying to bring it with an attack style, uh, just an attack style. That was it. Again, it's not you don't need to gimmick it up, but that's what we did, and everybody was aggressive, especially when they knew they had to be. It wasn't like somebody said, "Hey, you're gonna have to be aggressive today." No, we all knew we had to be because everybody wanted to get busy. So turn that energy up and try to work on getting that electricity sound. Um, so the era of time with those guys and that roster, I mean, it wasn't even really focused on the cruiserweights. It was just who was available and style wise, who was willing to get busy. Because I mean, you even had PCO at one point as the X Division champion. He was bigger than home.
mm,
So um, with just the group, as far as our group for the X division, everybody wanted to get busy. So anytime the opportunity of working with somebody who was hot in another area, it'd be like, okay, like for instance, like me versus AJ happened in Ring of Honor. He was hot from down south. I'm ruling the Northeast, and then they brought it to Philly. So that was a heavy, heavy match, and that was our first time. So people want to see stuff like that, but so do the wrestlers when they're really into what they're doing.
When you came back to TNA at one point, I believe it was around 2006-ish. I think it was around that time. You came back as Senshi instead of instead of using the name Loki. What was the idea behind that? Kind of switching it up a little bit.
Well, it wasn't intentional because TNA wanted to try to have the rights to my low key name. I
Right.
told Kerry straight up, like, "Oh no, no one deserves that."
Mm.
His response was, "Let's kind of rephrase that, please."
Right.
And I'm like, So that's all it was. They were trying to be greedy and try to get claim to my name.
Mm.
And I told them nobody earned that right. So we had they kept pressing me for a name. Yeah, Jimmy Suzuki was there, the photographer, and also a Japanese referee. He was there as a photographer. So went to him with an idea as far as like, when you say warrior in Japanese, that's senshi.
Mm.
That's it. It was like, yeah. So would that be okay to use? He goes, it should be okay. Like, all right. I went back and gave him that name, and that's what they ran with. So that really wasn't me. That was Jimmy Suzuki who named me or gave me the name to use. Um, and TNA began using it. But even when I would wrestle on the indies, everybody knew me as Low Key, so that's how I'd be advertised. And it was funny because I knew that TNA wasn't too happy about it because the promoters would tell me. They were like, "Yeah, they were trying to press you to be advertised as this." And I'm like, "No, people know him as Low Key. We're not going to do that." So they weren't playing that game with him, and that's the beauty about what I did. I was real with everybody, so I had backup with the people I did business with. And, that was the beauty about that era of time. It was a different era than what you see now. And the people who were involved, they were raised differently. So if you develop good bonds with good business, it's a different world.
Around that time within TNA as well, or kind of away from the ring, but within TNA, you played a very, very big part within the creating of the video game, which some people, still look up to today. I know graphically and gameplay wise, people still really enjoy it to this day. You played a big part in it because you did a lot of the motion capture work, and you also did the voice acting within the game. How did that opportunity come to you? Did Midway approach you personally, or is there a story of how you got that involved in the making of the game? Mm.
He called and asked, he goes, with your voice, would you mind doing a reading for us? And I said, sure. So I did a cold reading for him at Boone and the other guys there at Midway, and they okayed the transition of getting into the voice acting. So I was able to get 2 credits for that because I did the motion capture, the physical motion capture, as well as doing the voiceover, and that was Sal DeVito. So the biggest respect is to him.
You started within WWE as well. I think it was around today's. Well, it was towards the end of. Oh,
It
what
was
was it?
2000.
Yes, yeah, actually, yes. I was going to go a little bit later in the NXT era, but yes, we do actually have some clips here. I was going to get to that. You did actually start there a lot earlier, and I think a lot of people kind of either forgot or weren't even aware that you had these matches on. I believe there was a show called Metal, and there was a show called Jacked as well. What was it like? Kind of that first time you went to WWF at that time compared to maybe the later time when you went for FCW and then NXT? Mm.
But it was because I was the most aggressive. In the 2000, that's right after my first match in ECWA at Delaware. So um, it was a momentum thing by the time I got to WWF. So I wasn't fearful. I didn't care who were they going to put me up against. I was ready to go. And that freaked me out because I wasn't nervous. I was just like, okay, I'm ready. And that's how I treated it. I didn't act like I was a fan of anybody there. I didn't act like I was just submissive and timid. I would show up to the ring and I would work out before the match, like testing the ropes, moving around. And, I was doing stuff in front of all those older generation wrestlers that they were just cool with it, man. I was out and they were cool with me. They didn't, I wasn't hazed. I wasn't disrespected. But, at that era, you had more polished, more seasoned veterans at that time. There was no games to be played if you were serious about what you did. So it was a good experience for me. And then by the time I got to FCW, that was 2009. That's nearly 10 years later after pretty much conquering the world at that time. And now I'm more seasoned, but I'm at a higher level of physicality than ever before. And I got endurance, but I got main event world endurance. And that's a different physical level than going into FCW. I willfully went into FCW just to keep my skills sharp. And, unfortunately, we got injured a month later. And, it delayed my advancement because I was injured. And the FCW thing just killed me because I got injured multiple times and it was just eating up my time from keeping me from TV.
When you went on that second season of NXT, back then it was almost like not a game show, but it was very different to what we know now as NXT. Um, we had these wrestlers come in, and then they had mentors, and a lot of people have said it was almost like a rib on you at that time, because you were the most seasoned person who came in. So instead of putting you with a seasoned wrestler, like they did with Danielson the year before when he had the Miz, you had Layla and Michelle McCool. And a lot of people have said, oh, that was kind of a rib on him. But from interviews and stuff that I've seen from yourself and from both of them, both sides have just nothing but nice things to say about each other. It seemed like everybody got along well. It was all professional. Everybody just can't say enough nice things about each other at that time. Um, did you personally see it as a rib at that time, kind of on yourself, or is that something that other people have kind of projected that onto you at that point?
Well, see, that's the thing. That terminology that you're using, I can tell where it's coming from. One, it wasn't a joke. It was intentional.
Mm.
The same thing I've been going through my whole entire career. When these guys get nervous, they start doing shit to me intentionally. I'm already seasoned at that point, but they're trying to intentionally sabotage me. Then I was intentionally attacked by the other seven after I won the season. Everyone thinks this is part of the show. It wasn't because I wasn't told.
Right.
So you're dealing with a different culture because of the old man. So you think it's a rib that I'm trying to be forced into this stupid shit? Especially what was it when they tried to make us carry the barrel?
Yeah.
The barrel weighed more than me at that time. I asked the guys how much it weighed. And I was like, I'm not carrying this. You want us to what? Why did I train and go around the world to do this? To come here and lift a barrel? Like, no, they're doing this shit on purpose. Oh, and I'm supposed to take it, what, for the entertainment of the paying customer? Ah, okay. Yeah, you guys got me fucked up for somebody else. And that's the reason why people get nervous. Because I'm the only one who says enough. And when that happens and the record skips, the room stops. I was the one who was supposed to stop Vince. But what happened? Well, we got to let you go, right?
Mm.
Meanwhile, if I would have stopped Vince, all those charges may not have been hit on him. Hmm? That girl may not have gone through what she went through. Probably would have had a different line of executives at that time. But everybody was watching and everybody was cool because everyone thinks it's a part of the show. No, that environment was really messed up because of the old man. And everyone still is in denial that these are people that went through all of this. But nobody cares because, put smiles on people's faces. And they're putting their wrestlers in video games now and other video games because they're branding them. So, no, there's a different world. The NXT that you see now, yeah, more polished, more opportunity for the younger guys. But what they don't realize is they're also very clever on how they manage it. That ID thing that they're doing, they're basically making everyone else do their work. So instead of thinking like fans, if you're going to get in the ring, you need to think like a professional because this environment is brutally ruthless and don't give a damn about you or your body. Because even if something was done in plain sight, they still don't care. I'm living proof because everyone thinks, oh, it's a gimmick. It's a part of the show. The energy that you said you felt, look at what happens when it's done correctly. That's a different thing. That's energy. That's real. But that's the difference. Entertainment, they're gonna fake it till they make it. The professionals, that's the truth right there. People understand that when they see that, even in different languages. Why? Because it's energy. So that's the cool part about what we do. You can turn a room, but you can also charge one. So that's another skill set. So this thing is so dynamic and has so many levels. You can master this if you choose. But that's why 30 is the biggest mark. There's a special group of guys to get there, especially of significance, not just somebody who stood local for 30 years. So that's the that's an interesting point to keep in mind with the wrestling stuff. It's energy. What you see now, it's a variety of it, but if it's mismanaged, it's it's unfortunate. And it doesn't have to be because there's enough information now to do it right and do it well.
When like you went on to win this series, and you were so popular at that time within NXT, and then they switched you to the SmackDown brand, and counterintuitively they put you on this losing streak, which, if they're in the business of making money, surely they want the popular people and, the good workers to do really well. Surely it just makes sense. Um, why do you think they didn't push you to the moon at that point?
It's Vince. It was intentional. That's what I mean. People think this was, oh, just it just happened. Why you still framing it as if it was a part of the show. No, they did this on purpose. They tried to erase all the work that I did with my name just so that they can build over its ashes. But I'm supposed to stay quiet. That's what I did. I stood quiet and let everybody watch what they were doing. Everybody was cool with it. Case in point, when I got jumped, you had MVP, you had Kofi Kingston, and you had uh, Johnny Nitro Morrison. You had them run down to the ring to try to help me, and they were told to stand down by the referees by direct orders from Vince. So me going to SmackDown was no different because he still has the final say. One of my best matches was a match that never even aired. When I went after Lineage, I got a chance to wrestle uh Chavo, Chavo Guerrero.
Mm.
And I told him, I was like, this would be a chance for me to work with at least you, your uncle, and Hector. And he goes, that's cool. And they tried to shorten our match. And in the ring, Chavo was yelling at the ref, shut up, we'll finish when we finish. Because Vince was trying to end the match. He was trying to control the energy. Chavo fought for that. So we went in, had just a traditional technical match that was good. So that's what I mean. Vince did this shit on purpose. I hear all these interviews of people, the way that they're delivering the messed up stuff that Vince did to everybody. The guy don't deserve to be in jail. He deserves a sentence much worse than that. And everybody knows it, but no one wants to say it because of the bad things that happen, but people kind of want to forget about it. Yeah, we got too many of us still around, and he hasn't been held to account yet.
No.
And that was the play from back in the day. At least from what I was told, because I was groomed by older generation wrestlers and instructors. Vince had a way of making problems go away. So that's how, if he's pissed off this many people over this many generations and hasn't been offed yet, He's been paying a whole lot of people to go away. But that's okay. They're gonna do a documentary on Netflix to make everybody forget about it and not even cover half the disgusting shit he got away with.
Well, I think it was very timely, wasn't it? That the Netflix documentary came out. I think it was just before we knew of this whole WWE Netflix deal. Now, obviously, we know a little bit more. It does all seem a lot more calculated than we probably thought at the beginning. Um, your moniker, the World Warrior, it's not just a, like you say, it's not just a name, because you are this warrior all around the world. We mentioned earlier that you've been to Australia, you've been to Japan, obviously, and you've also been here within the UK. And I put a few different clips here together of some of the UK matches. What were some of your fondest memories of wrestling here in the UK?
It would have to begin with the first one. I believe I went there to Ipswich in 2000 during the summertime. I want to say perhaps July. And I think his name was Dan Reed out of Ipswich. The last time I went there was in 2017, and he had the School of Slam operating out of there. Um, and that was the first time I left the country and no experience, didn't really understand the whole travel process.
Mm.
And it was quite the experience when I got there because when I get to customs and they ask me where am I going, uh, I don't really have any information because I never got any of that before leaving. So having to explain uh, my reasoning for being there and finally getting through to just to get through customs and then meet up with everyone at the airport was one thing. Then when we get to the building, uh, promoter was trying to ask me to wrestle twice, and Robbie Brookside steps in and tells him, he's like, no, he's not doing that. So the main event turns into a five-way with, I believe, Johnny Storm, Robbie Brookside, and I can't recall the other two guys. Um, but that was my first experience in 2000, and this is before 9/11, so it was a different way of travel. And
Course.
going there, having that experience, I believe that was the first time I was introduced to Jaffa cakes.
Good choice.
So, but that's what, and I think I brought some back with me too. I can't remember correctly. So, it would have to be the first one. I've had plenty of different experiences, but that was the first one to set it off.
Um, you also like we've said that you went to Japan so many different times, and I mean you wrestled for Zero One, All Japan, New Japan, all of them. Um, what were some of your what are some of your fondest matches and fondest memories of going to Japan? Because you obviously have said like about all these classic wrestlers that you love, and that you're so into like the lineage of pro wrestling. How big a deal was it to go to Japan, and what are some of those fondest memories from there?
Going to Japan was my dream,
Mm.
plain and simple. I got it done 4 years into my career, a few days after my birthday in 2002. Then, because of my output, I was being relayed to other companies. So even while I was in Zero One, my attraction and output would go into All Japan. So I would do Zero One tours and All Japan tours at the same time, depending on the time of year. So I was right into the mix with the end of the Super J generation and the later generation of Japanese wrestlers, the end of the late '90s generation. Um, so I was in the mix with all those guys, but I was physically in shape and I was more aggressive than a lot of the guys. I just wasn't as big because you could still see the size difference in some of those matches, especially like with guys like Takaiwa. He was the Super J strongman, and he would be the guy who would do the multiple power bombs into the Death Valley driver. So like guys like that were physically just brutally strong. Very impressive to see how strong these guys are. But they trained extremely well and efficiently. So um, being a part of the lineage was important, but I also had to hold my own because they're notorious for testing the waters to see what they can get away with. So my first day in Zero One, which was in 2002, Fujiwara was running all the young boys, 9 of them, into their warm-ups and everything by ringside because that's customary for the students to train before the shows after setting up the arena. So they're in the ring and I'm on the outside watching, but I'm also working out and I'm trying to mimic what they're doing. So Fujiwara invites me in when it comes time for the end of the stretching. So um, I just got in the mix with them when they started doing grappling, and I was able to submit all of them. And he was wondering like what I did. And I told him, I said, I just do Aikido. That was my background at the time, but otherwise it was just my aggression. So he didn't understand. He was like, "You do Aikido, how do you ever grapple like this?" And I'm like, "No, just let I pay attention." So, it was just about 30, 45 minutes later, Hashimoto comes by and he looks at me and he goes, "Please, only 70%."
Wow.
So, but it was understandable. To me, I knew the history of Bob Backlund going to Japan and getting pressed.
That's right.
So there's a history to this that people are completely aware of, and that's the history of each individual traveling professional that had to earn their right along the way. I'm going against lineage. I'm not going against people who are forgotten. So there's a difference in the way it's done. And then in 2004, I had already run through the entire junior division and the junior tag division. So I told them I want to go to Noah because they were starting to be financial troubles and they were asking me to take cuts. And I'm like, with what I've done the past 2 years, I'm on the rise. I can't take a cut right now. So they sent me to Noah immediately. And off of that first round versus Kanemaru, that's where I got busy because now my physical strength was needed because of how big all the Noah boys were. And these are thick people, not small at all. And of course, me being smaller than them, I got to be able to tolerate all this. So I had to be extremely well trained at that time. And this is me training, nearly 30, 40 hours a week physically before going back to Japan in between tours. And I'm still wrestling stateside every weekend. So this is the life of a true professional, but I just don't have time for excess stuff. It's just straight doing all of this because this is what I love to do and then move on. So I was able to do a lot of things leading into New Japan because New Japan is the highest platform there. And even then, getting into the mix, I blew out my left knee in 2008 after leaving TNA. And it was for my first match in New Japan. My first match in New Japan was against, especially as low key, not Senshi, as it was against the legends. So it was Chono, Riki Choshu, Akira Nogami, Liger, and Tiger Mask 4. And I blew out my knee on the first match. I ruptured my ACL. So, like, I came back in 6 months and pulled the IWGP title off the Tiger Mask after that. Why? Because this is what I wanted to do. This is what I gave all my energy to do. And I came back ferocious. So, this is going through the levels in Japan. All of it was unique because each company has its different culture and each company has its different people. So it's very interesting because I grew into the dynamics of Japan because zero one was extremely physical. That's where I had my jaw broken, had my nose broken, and it was just a part of the game. Um, but then going into Pro Wrestling Noah, oh, in All Japan was more stylized with the people who were popular from the 90s. Like my partners were Grand Naniwa, the guy that had the crab head.
Mm.
Um, uh, was the other Kendo Kashin. He was also my partner. At times when we would team in All Japan. So I was around the lineage of the Japanese wrestling, the wrestling culture, the wrestling history. So that's what I dreamed to be a part of. I put that out and I was able to fulfill it. I even have one match in Pro Wrestling Gaia, which is a women's company, but it was a men's match. So it was me and Sylvester Turkey, Predator,
Mm.
versus Steve Carino and Spanky. So I went through literally all the highest level platforms for what we do in Japan as champion or as attraction.
Loki, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I mean, it always seems almost a misjustice to try and fit so much of your career within like this hour landscape. It seems very unfair to try and cram it all in, but we have to try and flit, to get all the way around the world. But thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for being so giving with a lot of your answers. Um, what have you got coming up now within the next few months? Have you got anything planned, anything on the horizon that you can share at the moment?
I'm working on another series of Grand Prix of sport martial arts exhibitions. I ran one in 2023 in Orlando. I'm working on another one coming out in 2025. And I have a lot more support than I had back then. So I've been working on that. Also been training wrestlers and fighters. So again, adapting what I love is a beautiful thing because it's so many points of interest. You figure you brought up the video game. The video game is motion capture work. So we're physically wrestling, but we also have to be careful not to get hurt because this is what's being used for the video game. And we wanted the video game to be very, very good because we grew up playing video games and we wanted to top all the other wrestling games by doing it ourselves. So we were motivated to do well. That's another thing. But then I did the voice work. So now you're covering voice acting. This is all covering different dimensions of other fun stuff because it's based off of what I love to do. And now I'm able to do it this deep into my career where I'm able to help other people. My first student is the top girl in the world right now, Stephanie Vacker. So I don't really have much to be disappointed with, but I'm still able to see this is what love produces. And I told her that in 2021 when she came to train with me. I told her, I'm showing you what love is. I'm not in love with you. I'm just showing you what love is with the wrestling stuff. There's a difference. You're getting a chance to see what that looks like and then what it is you do for yourself. That's a whole different thing because people are not accustomed to being introduced to that. But now, look at what she's doing.
I know we're very, very excited to see what Stephanie can do. It feels like the sky's the limit for her at the moment. Unbelievable talent. Thank you so much again for joining us on the show. Stay on the line and we'll do a proper goodbye as well after we finish here as we wrap this up. Guys, another amazing interview today here on the channel. As you could probably tell with the way I was throughout that interview, Loki was one of my favorite wrestlers within that 2002, especially to 2008 time frame. You know, everybody knows I was a massive Ring of Honor fan at that time, and you know, I genuinely meant it when he had that fight for honor, fight without honor match. Sorry, match with Samoa Joe. It kind of opened up so much for me, and then you hear me talking about things like rings and UWFI. But well, that was where it started, and it's probably where my love for MMA started as well, in a weird way. And that's probably why I got so heavily into that after that. But guys, thank you so much for checking out the interview today. Please leave a like and subscribe down below. Leave some comments down below. Leave your favorite low-key matches and moments down below as well. As always, guys, look after each other, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.